Back in the Creator Lab. Jay's not here. Super exciting. I'm taking over Industries and Insights. No, I'm just kidding. I'm super excited to have Amanda here, though. We are launching a new segment where we're going to talk about all things HR. Today, we're going to dive into leadership, one of our favorite topics. I know we talk a lot, so it's great the cameras are rolling today. So tell us a little bit about you, Amanda, your journey through HR, your journey through leadership. What inspired you to pursue your career in HR?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Amanda Macaspac. I'm the head of HR over at a company called Tecumseh Products. And for me, the journey started many moons ago. I won't get into that.
Put a number on it.
No, not here, not on camera. No, but so my journey really started during college when I was looking at different internships. And so I had interviewed for two different HR internships. One was a benefits and payroll intern position. The manager said, you know what, at the end of this internship, you have a guaranteed position on my team. So that was one. And then there was another position that I had interviewed for where that was not guaranteed. The manager said, look, I'm building an HR team. I don't have anybody today. And I can't guarantee that you'll have a spot here at the end, but you're going to be creating the foundations of HR at this company.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, yeah, that's the one I'm picking for sure. So I don't know if that speaks a little bit to being willing to take a risk, but for me, that was super exciting. The idea that I could do more early, and I thought, oh, that's for sure going to benefit me later.
Yeah, and definitely launched the career path that you're on, likely, and helped kind of build those cornerstones, which I know I've talked about my own. Even the internship made such a difference, right? Like so much exposure, and we even kind of talked about the first kind of opportunity you have to start cherry picking what really, helped shape who we are. So I really want to talk about, because I know I have my own, but like, what was the most pivotal moment in your career and shaped the way that you approach HR today?
Yeah, so it was pretty early in my career. I was an individual contributor at that time. The company that I worked for was having some problems with retaining middle managers.
Okay.
So we were losing them left and right. I dug into our exit surveys. We do actually look at those, you guys.
That's a good plug.
Yeah. And talked to the existing current middle managers that were in the organization. And what I found was there was a ton of frustration around, they put me in this position, but they didn't give me any tools to succeed. They didn't give me any guidance. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
And it's new. And so I was like, okay, what we need to do then is put together a comprehensive management development program, get these people some tools, get them some coaching.
Yeah.
And, help them in their journey. And so after this program concluded, one of the participants came up to me and he was like, I was really skeptical. This guy was an engineering manager. He was super technical. And he was like, I was skeptical. And then he's like, you know what? I took my coach's advice in how I talk to people. He goes, it made all the difference. I'm a believer. You can count me in now.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just a simple thing, right?
And that'll stick with you.
Yeah.
That'll stick with you.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you talk about training and development and seeing the return on it and starting to really like see those tools get implemented and how they transform the day to day. And when you're talking about leadership development, I'm just thinking about even my own time in manufacturing and how many times do we just see a super strong individual contributor, you are killing the job. Let's make you a supervisor. Let's make you a manager. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the entire dynamic has shifted. And it's because of that lack of tools and building that toolkit when you make that transition from individual contributor to people leader.
Absolutely.
But that's awesome. You were an individual contributor at the time. So what did you take away from that when you moved into leadership?
Yeah. I think I was lucky in two aspects. One, since I put together the program, I pseudo went through it, which was really cool. Yeah. And then for me too, I was also super blessed in that my first manager was a fantastic leader. It makes such a difference.
It really does.
Yeah. It really does. She had this like magical ability to empower her team to take on bigger and better things and to make that really visible to the leadership team. So just the way that she could, recognize me and other individuals on her team, just make us look like we shined all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it just opened so many doors for me and other people on the team.
Yeah.
So
no, that reminds me. I was asked actually in an interview if you could take a characteristic or a trait that someone had that you've worked with, that you wish you had or that you wish you could kind of put, and it was like an immediate light bulb moment. It's so similar to what you just said.
Yeah.
I worked with a super strong leader that introduced his team on calls in a way I've never seen done before. And I hope I do that, right? Like I hope I do that for others and I do that for my team, because instead of just kicking a topic to his team member, he would position it in such a way that there's only one person that can speak to this. And this is why, because they've put all the work and they've put all the effort. And if you have any questions, this is the person to go to. And he would do it in such broad settings. And it stuck with me because it was such a different way. And how many times do we sit on a meeting and it's like, Amanda, excuse me, Amanda, can you get that? Can you say that? Can you share your screen?
Right.
Instead of, what I saw that I've been able to kind of carry. And again, hope I do that for others, because sometimes the recognition, right? The recognition gets lost, or if that's not what you like, right? If recognition is maybe not what I need as an individual, it almost drops, right? Like it drops out of my toolkit of things to remember when I lead a team and when I'm interacting with people. So
even like what you're saying is such a small thing. It just takes a couple of extra seconds to do.
But a conscious
if you do it
effort
with purpose, and you're intentional about it, it makes all the difference.
No, absolutely. So I really want to talk about leadership, right? It's why we're here. We love the topic. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, especially we have. So make sure that we just stay on track. But not only just from the HR perspective, which we will certainly get into. I mean, and that's what I love about our role, how many different leaders we've gotten to learn from, we've gotten to advocate and partner with. So there's so many pieces, I think, and skills that I have. Can we use stolen? Like I just take them and put them in my own.
You said cherry pick earlier, and I think that's like the best way to phrase it.
Like I like that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that.
Even
going
on the
forward.
opposite side, like some leaders that you were like, ooh, I know not to do that.
For sure. saw the impact, saw the domino effect for that one. So I'm going to leave that out. Yeah. But what does it look like for you? Like talk to us about like, what does leadership look like? And in your words, kind of how would you define it?
So for me, kind of on that cherry picking model, I've had the great opportunity to work with some amazing leaders, and they lead in different ways. But the one thing that connected all of them was their ability to empower their team.
Yeah.
So, some did it through relationship building and connecting their team to other initiatives or different executives, giving them exposure that way.
Yeah.
Or, whether it was that or whether it was just, making their team visible.
Right.
And then really just challenging their teams. So for growth.
Yeah. I love that. And even just the difference between leadership and management or supervision or, whatever your title ends up being, but just the difference between leading the charge instead of being in the back and making sure that your team gets to the destination, you're actually taking that kind of front spot.
Yeah. And I think it doesn't matter what your title is. You can be a leader at any level in the organization.
You can be a leader without a team. I truly believe that. Yeah. I truly believe that, because no matter what the job is or what your role in the company is, there has to be that buy-in. You have to see the vision, want to be a part of the vision. And regardless of the team aspect, I 100% have seen some of the strongest leaders are individual contributors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to go one step further. What do you think organizations need from leadership? And now I really let's get into the HR side of it. What do organizations need when we talk about leadership, especially developing leaders, even the transition from individual contributor to leadership? What do organizations need out of their leadership team?
So you touched on vision a minute ago, and I think that's a hugely important one. Yep. They need somebody who understands and is bought into the vision, who can articulate it to their team so that their team understands the big picture. They understand the direction that we're all going in.
Yep.
And so not only that, but they can also recognize the strengths on their teams and galvanize their teams to be high performing and to move all in the same direction towards that vision.
Yeah.
So
So how do you do that at different levels? I mean, when you think about, right, I mean, HR, organizational charts, the hierarchy, how many different levels there are in an organization when you're talking about just that vision, and I think even more so consistency in communication and articulating that.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I think it's certainly harder the further down the hierarchy you go.
Yeah.
It's like a game of telephone.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So, to me, it's not just can I communicate it down to my direct reports, it's can I communicate it to the entire organization? Am I constantly tying things back to how that's going to help us achieve the mission?
Yeah.
Am I recognizing people who maybe aren't on my team that are moving us forward in that direction?
Right.
And just constantly keeping that top of mind in every meeting I'm in, every water cooler discussion I'm in.
Yeah. It's understanding the why. I mean, how many times have you said that? Like, it's like a catchphrase, right? Like, understanding the why, I can't explain it if I don't understand the why, but more so, I think sometimes we even forget to. Like, we forget to explain the why. Even when we have that understanding, that's step one. Mm-hmm. Step two is if you want that alignment and you want that buy-in, everyone that you're communicating with on your team, or to your point, other departments that you interact with and co-collaborate with, that buy-in has to be there. So the why, there has to be intention. Like, I loved when you said that, like, there has to be intention. You have to have purpose.
Yeah.
And that's so important, I think, in the communication.
Yeah.
So middle management, like, why do you think that ends up being where the challenges are and where the struggle is? I know you were talking about the farther you get down.
Right. Well, I think it's the hardest place in an organization to be when you're thinking about, okay, so I have two sets of very different customers, right? I have to manage up to my boss who has a certain set of expectations, and then I have to manage down to my team.
Yeah.
Make sure that I'm clearly aligning some of those, the needs of both. And then even like I have to network across, right? I need to start building those relationships because, as we all move up together, I mean, they have to be functional, they have to work.
Right.
So I think it's a position where you see a lot of burnout because it's exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
It's exhausting.
Definitely. I think one of the challenges that I find too, especially when you're talking on this topic with middle management, is leading with authenticity. And it's finding kind of where I fit, where I'm still meeting expectations of my role. I'm still aligned with what my manager needs out of me and needs out of the team so that we're still, again, aligned and focused on the vision. But I still want to lead authentically, right? I want to connect with my team. I want to build that rapport. And those are one of, I think, the biggest challenges is when you're working for someone that maybe has a completely different management style. And then you find yourself, even sometimes, I think, without thinking, you're translating messages in the same way they're translated to you at times. And I know I've done that coaching, right? Like, I know I've sat with different leaders and different managers at all levels to say just how you heard the message doesn't mean it's how you have to give the message. So it's take a beat, right? Like, it doesn't have to be recommunicated or a simple email forward if that's not going to land well. And I think that's one of the things that I even try to focus on when I talk about HR as a partnership. I do that intentionally. We do that intentionally because you have the rapport. You have the relationship built with the team, and you're going to know how to resonate, and you're going to know how to connect, and you're going to know how to shift the communication because I'm going to give you something broad stroke that fits everybody. And then you have to figure out how to make that work for your team. So, your point on middle management, I know that's the challenge. Like, what's one challenge that you would say from middle management that you have found? I know mine, but what do you think is one of the biggest challenges there?
Yeah, I think for me, maybe in that example earlier was maybe a good one, right? I'm transitioning from doer to delegator, and it's hard. I think a lot of people have a really hard time even sometimes letting go of the work. And it's funny, something happened. So I was on maternity leave a little while ago here. And somebody asked me, they were like, "Ooh, are you worried that your team is going to outshine you while you're out?" And I thought, no.
The exact
opposite of that.
The exact opposite.
No, I hope they shine like diamonds, because that just makes me look like I made a great hiring decision. I built a high-performing team. I mean, we talked about what organizations need.
Right.
They need leaders who can build high-performing teams.
Absolutely.
Period.
And what peace of mind, too, that gives you when you have that confidence in your team to step up and do what needs to be done, instead of, to your point, like the doer versus delegator. It's not in anyone's favor, my own included, to hold on to everything.
It holds you back.
Exactly. Yeah. And to be the only one that can kind of take action on these items or push things through to the finish line.
Because honestly, too, like when leaders are looking at, okay, well, who can I promote to that next level? If you're stuck in the day-to-day, if you are getting yourself into the weeds, then you cannot see the bigger picture because you don't have the time to dedicate toward it.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking as a leader, who do I want to move to that next step? It's not somebody that can do it. Right. I need somebody who can lead people that can do it and who can empower people to do it.
Yep. Motivate, hold your team accountable, but more than anything else, it's also self-leadership, holding yourself accountable.
That's a big one.
Because what I do want to credit too is that may be where your job fulfillment is. Like, I got really used to doing it, and that's what I love to do, and that's what motivates me and gets me excited about the day-to-day, but also remembering the role that you play, right? To your point, well, that's not what the organization needs. The organization needs you to step up and start building that same knowledge and building that same sense of excitement and job fulfillment out of your team that you get every day.
Right.
So let's talk about a lessons learned moment.
I had one this morning.
Oh my, great. So, I'm perfect, because I really wanted to put you on the spot. Great. Like what?
I'm sure you've had a few.
Okay, well, we don't have time. We don't have time. We'll just kick it to you. What's your lessons learned moment?
Yeah, so this morning I had a meeting. I have been irritated. I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this.
We're not talking about a real person.
Yeah, no, obviously not. Right. So I've been irritated that one of my teams is not moving in the direction that we've all communicated and said, hey, we're going to work within this new system that we implemented, so that we're all doing it the same way, and we've got information in a shared space, and so that hasn't been happening. And so I had a meeting with her today on kind of something different, and I brought up, why are we not operating in the system like we all agreed to?
Yeah.
And she kind of froze up a bit, and she was like, but can employees see what we're doing in there?
Oh.
And I realized, this is my fault.
So Amanda was irritated at Amanda.
Yeah, no, I was irritated. Yeah, no, I drove here after that meeting irritated with myself. because I mean, the buck stops with me, right?
Right.
If they didn't understand what they could and couldn't do, or what the capabilities were of the system, that's on me. That's my fault. I did not communicate it clearly. I didn't give enough level of detail. I certainly didn't ask enough times, is that clear? Do you have questions?
Is the understanding there?
More.
Yep.
There are so many things that I could and should have done differently, and that's on me.
Yeah. So. But that speaks into even just different management styles, right? Yeah. Because you kind of go into it thinking like, I'm not going to do the follow through. Because, we've all worked for that manager that's like, is it done? Did you get it done though?
Right.
But like I asked you, like,
that's a fine line.
Did you do it?
Right.
Is it done? Like, you don't want to do that. And then you kind of find yourself like, oh no, I'm super hands off. I got the hands off approach.
You can be too hands off. I have fallen victim to this too.
Right? Like, I didn't want to ask you. I'm kind of waiting for you to raise your hand. And no, that's, a huge, huge lesson to be learned, because you think you're going in with the best intention, right? Yeah. And then you find out. But I love that even, and it's really honestly probably how I posed the question, like self-reflection, right? But like so important as a leader, right?
Yes.
Because it's so much easier as a human, not as a leader. It's so much easier to want to put that external.
We naturally do it, right?
Naturally.
It's our instinctual.
Naturally. Like, it was definitely somebody else. Like,
right.
For sure. It wasn't me.
Yeah. No, it's hard to turn the dial back at yourself and say, no, this one's me.
Right.
And you have to start with that.
Yeah. So I love that. And just how many times do we try to incorporate that self-reflection at every piece of the stage.
Gotta be constant.
Yeah, and it's not just really, honestly, it's not just leaders, right? When we talk about organizations, and I know our focus, of course, today is on leadership, but even talking about the individual contributors, and especially when we talk about strategy and vision, how can you do it? Like, how can you do it if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know that strategy and that vision? So I guess like my one kind of plea is that if you aren't getting the information,
go and ask.
Ask
go
for
and
it.
Ask. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Don't wait for it to be given. And if that question is there, ask. And if you don't know who to ask anyone. Because how much have we learned too? Not from our managers. Right. I mean, I've learned so much from my managers, but how much do you just learn from peers, from employees? I mean, I've learned so much even bringing on new hires and what their onboarding experiences have been at different companies. And when you even, you kind of touched on like exit interviews and seeing that shift from exit interviews to stay interviews. Yes. How much do you learn from employees that have been here for, a range of years and seen different leaderships and have seen, different styles and different visions and different strategic plans. So I really do say, like, if you don't know who to ask anyone.
And
start
honestly,
building that network.
People love it when you ask.
Right.
It just shows initiative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people just generally in nature want to share.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I know, I'm going to definitely tell you if you ask, but I may not know that you need that question asked unless you come to me. So
and then that builds relationships and that builds trust.
Oh,
yeah. It's just a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So, we talked about even self-reflection, which I love. And now I want to talk about your favorite topic, personality assessments. You love them.
I do. Jaclyn, you could put one in front of me right now and I would take it.
It's so funny, actually, because we're just going to clear the table. We have one. We're going to bring in Tara. All
right,
we're going to bring in a laptop.
I'm ready.
Tell, why though? Like when we talk about, especially to like personal development.
Yeah.
Why do you love personality assessments?
Oh, they're such a great tool for self-awareness.
Yeah.
So, I was really fortunate early to have like that sit in on that management development course where we had this personality assessment, and a couple of the things that it highlights your strengths, but it also highlights your blind spots.
Right.
And it's really important and can stall a lot of leaders if you don't know what they are. Right? What is holding me back?
Right.
These things are holding you back.
And how many assessments have you taken? And then I just get texted and found a new one.
I know. I
found a new one. You should take this.
So great.
And then we compare our disc styles and where we fall in the little chart.
We're opposites. I don't know if you can sense that, but
no, they probably could. It shows right through to the camera.
Right. We complement each other well. Though.
Yeah. But no. I know we could talk about this for so long, but leadership just in general, we've talked a lot about reflection. And the last kind of thing that I want to make sure that I talk about, especially when you talk about visionary leadership, is just that sense of extreme ownership, right? Is just owning. And I know when I think about leadership, everybody has a different sense of it, right? Yeah. And how it's changed over the years and how it's evolved. And when we look back through our career in HR, which we're not putting a number on, don't worry, I got your back. Yeah. How has that changed in not only the focus, but I think the view of leadership?
Oh, I think it's totally different now than when we started. I have this vision in my head, or this image in my head of the old school leadership. Do what I say because I said to do it.
Right.
And now...
Know why.
No, know why. You don't need to know why. I just told you to do it, so go do it. And it didn't work.
Right.
It didn't work. And so it's different now.
And we've even talked about how much too, culturally, I think organizations have shifted let's limit it to just even the last 10 years. And so many things that have, I think, hit us as a society that we've now brought into the workplace that was never there and absent. And then you start seeing that different generational leaders or even just tenure, right? I mean, how much is that going to play into your leadership style if what you have been doing has worked in the organization for as long as you've been there? Right. And now you're starting to see different leaders and different ways of communication and even different focuses, right?
You get to cherry pick.
Yeah. I mean, we're back on that cherry picking. So
I don't know why that's the phrase.
I know. I mean, I love it. We're going to coin it. I think the last thing that I just want to ask you before we wrap, and I just appreciate you being here so much, is just, I know for me, we've talked about like different buckets and kind of holding on. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received in your career? Maybe not number one, because then it'll feel like, oh my gosh. What's the best piece of advice you've received that you want to share?
Yeah. For me, that was, you grow infinitely faster outside of your comfort zone. And it's really hard to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's so hard to do it.
So hard to do it. And
how do you do it?
Oh, you just have to believe in yourself. You've got to have that great self-talk.
Yeah.
And that self-confidence of, I'm not going to fail. I think this is the right approach, or I think this is the right thing. So I'm going to speak up. I'm going to put together a proposal, just throw it out there and see how it goes. But I'm taking that risk and I'm stepping out. And so that to me was the biggest game changer.
Yeah. And I want to honor too, that is likely very difficult for people. And the reason I think this is your advice is it's probably was more difficult for you at times based on your personality and based on where your comfort zones and levels are. Yeah.
Oh, and failing in front of people, that's even
publicly.
Worse. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's a tough one. It's a tough one for a lot of folks.
But I appreciate that that's the advice that you do want to share because of how challenging I think at times it can be, especially when you talk about this could go one of two ways, right?
Yeah.
And you really only want it to go one of two ways, but that's second.
But honestly, even if it goes that way, like you have to really embrace having that growth mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, if it doesn't work out, then I'm going to learn something. I'm going to learn either there was something missing in my proposal that they needed to see. Okay, I know that for next time.
Yep.
Or, if something isn't working. So here's a good example of that even. We put together our HR roadmap. And so recently we did an engagement survey. So we have these things that we've got plans to do. And what came back was a little bit different than what we had planned, right? These are employees saying, this is what's actually important to us. It's stay interviews.
This is the priority.
Stay interviews, exit interviews, engagement survey. They're all saying the same thing. These are the important things to us.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we're going to pivot from what we're doing. Let's not continue moving in this direction. Let's focus on what's important to employees. So we're going to move some things up from the roadmap. We're going to push some things off.
Yeah.
But, it's all about how can you pivot? If you're going to fail fast and fail smart.
Yes. And be adaptive, right?
There's no way you can do it wrong if you think about it that way.
Adapt to change. Yeah. And I think just to kind of close on that is that fear of failure, how much, and it's not always great, but how much more do you learn from failure and not wanting to fail again? That's one of the pieces of advice, like I know I've given teams and individuals that have worked with me is we are going to. So that's inevitable. Right. Like mistakes are going to happen.
Mentally, like put yourself in a place where we're going to do
perfection,
it and we're going to figure it out.
Not a thing. Right. Perfection is not a thing because especially as we talk about like adapting to change, you're going to have to change what you thought you should do, but sometimes it's after you already did it.
I don't know if we have the time, but so this is another good piece of advice I got, and it's kind of similar, but I'm a perfectionist. Yeah. Naturally, right? I want to have everything done perfectly before I roll it out. And I had a leader who gave me some advice, and she said, look, 80% is good enough.
Right.
To get it out there.
Yeah, and no one knows your 100% also. Right. Your version of perfection
and
is so different than everybody's version of perfection. Right. But no, I love that piece of advice because to your point, and it obviously stuck with you, but those moments in your career, those moments in time are what sticks with you. So even for me, it's like one step further is don't be afraid. And way easier said than done because like we're probably going to do something later this week that we're afraid of. So it's like just don't be afraid of that because the return on it, the return on what you can learn and again build into your toolbox and morph into your style or creating a stepped approach that you didn't even think needed to exist until you missed something and then you're like, oh yeah, I probably should have built some form of checklist and measure for that. So no, I love that. I really appreciate your time today, especially talking about leadership. again, it's such a huge topic
Yeah, we could talk
in
about so many other
organizations,
things.
you
Yeah.
know, individual, strategic, and, you know, development. And we have so many more topics to talk about. But I just appreciate all the time that you've spent with me today. And thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be back soon.